So let's do those, and then after you're done, you can just leave them kind of with your name tags at the end of the time. Here's what's going to happen today. I will talk to you about presentation aids, and then I will talk to you briefly about the upcoming presentations, and then I will leave some room for questions, because this is the last time you hear from me. We're done. The rest is guest lectures and your presentations. So if at any point today, while I'm talking, you have some questions that arise about structure, about presentation aids, about audience, about any of the things that I talked to you about, or about any other issues that you might have with presentations, please ask me. And of course, I'm going to be here still, and we're going to have lectures and everything, but I'm just letting you know that as far as me sharing knowledge with you, we're done. That's all the knowledge I have to share. Let's move, speaking of distractions. That is a good thing to notice and avoid. You hear this? I do. Okay. Before we move on, do you guys have any questions from the get-go about structure, about what we talked about last time, about anything else?
I just had a quick question for you, Margaret, and the whole class. I was looking at syllabus to remind myself what I was doing today, and the thought just came to mind that maybe we might like to switch the order of our presentation to peers versus presentation to the general public. I'm just thinking maybe if we do the to peers one first, that's closer to what we're already doing in our home department one, and we can get feedback from each other as to what we can understand as lay people across each other's disciplines, and what needs to be changed to be made more simple or more vivid or whatever. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Oh, as to so our presentations for non-academics become better that way?
I think they might. At least we learn something useful about like how much of the content is accessible to non-specialists, and maybe suggestions for what to keep, like, oh, the graphics have this, it's made it all clear. Oh, but ditch those next 5 slides, they're completely non-appropriate for the general audience. Or just,
That's quite clever.
I see where the idea is coming from. I do. That is exactly what I don't want you guys to do.
oh.
I want you to prepare your presentation with your audience very specifically in mind. I don't want you to take the presentation you already have that's prepared for academics and cut it. I want you to think completely from the scratch about talking about what you do to people who don't know what you do. That was kind of the idea behind it. Because remember on the last lecture, and I can totally see where you're coming from, because first of all, it makes you work less because you have it done.
Maybe not. It would be hard either way.
And the second thing is, it seems like a good sequence. The thing is, about audience centeredness, and why I was talking so much about think who exactly you're talking to when you're preparing your presentation. I'm hoping even your structure can be different when you talk to academics versus non-academics. I'm thinking your emphasis will hopefully be completely different. Maybe even your main points will be different. Because, like, for instance, when we talk about, I'm thinking about Begonia's research, and I'm thinking, if she talks to people who have no idea what she's doing, she's going to have to not only cut it in half or 1/3 or 1/5 or however. She's going to have to change her vocabulary. She's going to have to change the way she talks about stuff, because remember, what we see when we look up is completely something different than they see, and completely, we call it different names, because we don't know 90% of the things that you are just like, oh yeah, totally, of course, I mean, you don't know what it is, right? She's going to have 2 different presentations, and I'm hoping that's what's going to happen with you guys too, that you're going to have to ask yourself kind of from a different angle how I should talk about it if I'm talking to people who really don't know what I'm talking about. Does that make a little more sense if I'm able to like explain why I made your life difficult?
Yeah, and I think my hope is that having these 2 presentations is is not, well, one thing is that you get the experience of doing the 2 different presentations and how to compare them, but also that you have something that you can take and use somewhere. So you don't have this, you're doing a presentation for non-academics and I'm never going to use it. But hopefully you do such a great job on it that you could then go and maybe take it to, a high school in the area. Or like for me, I work out of a campground basically, and they have education programs. So maybe I could take my presentation and do it at the campground as like a service kind of thing to the public. So maybe keep that in mind when you're preparing it, as like not only you're doing it for this class, but how could you use it outside the class and make the most of your time with people.
Or you want to be a guest lecturer at, for instance, community college, and you're talking to people who are just starting or maybe thinking about graduate school. You don't want to scare them, but you do want to present it in a way that's very accessible and at the same time very interesting. That's a very good example. You might want to use something that hopefully will be completely different than something you will present in your department, in front of your thesis advisor, in front of for a conference, in front of your peers. So it's like I'm thinking different, completely different structures, maybe different main points, different approach. We don't want to hear the same presentation twice. And I'm glad you mentioned it because it's a good way to think about it too, as you guys prepare, like how to make those. It was funny, I was preparing a presentation about intercultural communication for community college, and I realized that even in communication, it's something as people-oriented as communication. We use certain words all the time that are very discipline-specific, and I had to cut them all out and say, okay, what was it when I didn't know what it really is? And I just thought about this talking to people and communicating. How do you do that? And that's a challenge. It's fun. Do it. Any other questions, concerns, issues, needs? Okay. Presentation aids. A few things I want to tell you about presentation aids. We use them, of course, constantly. What we tend to think about when we think about presentation aids is PowerPoint. I want you to remember that is not the only option. There are other things you can do that include audiovisual aids that do not include PowerPoint. First and foremost thing that I want you to be prepared for when you are planning to use a presentation aid is be prepared for not using it. Because if you have a presentation with a PowerPoint that relies on this PowerPoint so heavily that if you don't have your computer, it breaks, something doesn't work, the projector doesn't turn on, the switch, the cable, the adapter, the Mac versus the non-Mac, so whatever happens, you need to be able to say something. Besides, I'm sorry, my PowerPoint does not work. And that's it. And I'm serious, it happens. As unlikely as we think it does, it happens all the time. Things don't work, computers don't match, adapters don't want to adapt, projectors do things. Have something to say besides, I'm sorry, my PowerPoint doesn't work. And this is something that I strongly encourage. Have a plan B, always.
So, are you going to sneak attack us and do that to us in this class?
It might as well happen in this class completely without my... That's usually what happens, to be honest with you. I teach public speaking, and I teach public speaking in different rooms, but most often in wellness. And there are 2 rooms in wellness that I teach public speaking in. And my computer always works. Always. Nothing happens. But I always tell students, be prepared, the computer might not work, blah, 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 blah. And every time, first round on informative speeches, at least 3 people don't get their audiovisual aid. I don't know. I don't know if it's aura, I don't know if it's the machinery that already heard me so many times that it kind of just reacts to, okay, she's yelling, we work. She's not yelling, we don't work. I don't know how it works, but I kid you not, it just doesn't work. Certain people have Macs and it doesn't work. Certain people just connect the computer and nothing happens. I don't know why. Magic. It just happens. So you know what? It might just as well happen, and I'm not going to have to do anything. We'll see. But no, be prepared for it, because it really does happen, and I witnessed it plenty of times. And if you have this one opportunity, this one conference, this one presentation, this one time to do it, you better be prepared to do it. So whatever you need, is it you need to print your slides, or you need to have an outline, or you need to be able to explain things, and hopefully you will be able to deliver your presentation without saying, so here I will show you this thing I'm not going to show you, which would be really cool and would help you, but I don't have it. That's not very helpful. So try to have a plan B. And this also might be a very good thing for you to deal with your apprehension. If you know that worst comes to worst, you're still prepared. That is a very good, another little technique to make yourself feel less anxious. Because if you know that you're prepared, even if things don't work, that makes you feel that extra cushion. That makes you feel extra, a little more secure, hopefully. Make sense? Okay. Second thing. I love when that happens. And I know you've been there, and I know you've seen it plenty of times. The person talking to the PowerPoint, and they're talking and talking and talking about it. And then PowerPoint is not showing, or showing something completely different. Or there's a fire going on in the back of the room, and they don't notice. Because they don't look at their audience. They look at their PowerPoint. And this is not a joke. I mean, it's funny now, but this is not a joke. I witnessed the presentation when something started burning in the back of the room and people started leaving and the guy didn't notice. Because he was talking to his PowerPoint. I kid you not. The guy was standing reading off his PowerPoint and people started leaving the room and he didn't notice. Don't talk to your PowerPoint. I know you're very proud of it and you have a very intimate relationship with your PowerPoint. It's a great PowerPoint and you spend a lot of time preparing it. Don't talk to it. Talk to your audience. Because nothing makes worse impression than a person who does this. So, now we're going to be talking about my PowerPoint that I wrote and I really like, so I'm not going to look at you ever, and I'm going to read off my PowerPoint. After about 45 seconds of that, you're done. You have no connection with me, we have no eye contact, you don't listen to me. I mean, we all can read. We're in grad school, man. If you really think that everything that you really have to say or present can be written on it, then don't bother. Well, for some reason we're out there. This is very important, and this is not only to a PowerPoint, it's for the board, a poster. Basically, don't talk to it. Talk to your audience. Remember that your audiovisual aid is not for you, it's for the people who you talk to. In his defense, it was a fairly big room. The room where things started burning, so maybe it would be loud before you would smell it, but literally, anyway, be careful. The other thing, when you think about your audiovisual aid, why do you think people use audiovisual aids? Why do we have PowerPoints and presentations?
A lot of things are easier to explain with a picture or a graph than paragraphs of talking.
And yet, how often do you see people have paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs on their slide? Why? Again, we're in college, you can't read. Why do we use PowerPoint then? No, seriously, like why? Why do you have audiovisual aids in presentations?
Personally, I don't like using PowerPoint because
Me neither, I'm with you.
I don't know, I sometimes use it because I have to. And if I have an option to use or not, I prefer not to use it.
Are there certain things that are better explained with an audiovisual aid?
I think it's to explain, it's more structuring of your talk and the audience too. Another way to clarify what you're saying.
That's true.
Another way of communicating.
What about stuff like numbers, percentages, proportions? It helps to have a graph for it.
And also in a sense of graph and what having something visual to look at as far as thinking, okay,
I almost get your question the other way around at first. Like, what occasions do you not really require a presentation aid to make it better? I mean, it's storytelling. You kind of, the folk singer or whatever who's telling a story, and it's part of the point of it to have the audience use their imagination. And then I'm thinking, we could maybe occasionally do that in something sciencey or whatever. Imagine my first galaxy. I mean, whatever. But like if you're trying to picture, okay, we're studying the ancient culture of Croatia, and there's hills and valleys and rice farms or whatever. That's fine if what's required is just an impression or a general idea of a landscape or something. If you really need to show exactly how the curve goes, there's nothing to replace it. You don't want your audience using their imagination on your even if you could absolutely accurately explain what you got going on.
Look at what happened. I asked you a question about audiovisual aids, and 3 examples you gave me were physical pictures of something. It's easier to see something if we have a picture of it. Structuring our presentation and visualizing certain concepts, like graphs or like proportions. Now that we've established that these are all 3 good reasons to use an audiovisual aid, think about audiovisual aids that you've seen people use and that you use. How little do they have in common with these 3 purposes? Why people feel the need to write their presentations on the slide? Why? Is it relevant? Does it show a picture? Does it show a graph? Or does it show structure? No, it doesn't show either. It makes you feel better. That's not the point of audiovisual aid. I want you to think about your audiovisual aid in a very utilitarian way. Am I using it? Do I need it? Does it help my presentation? Because if it doesn't, don't put it there. Because it doesn't make sense. Really. And I understand that in some contexts you feel like, okay, I'm going to show up there without a PowerPoint. That's not going to be professional. That's not going to make sense. They're not going to understand me. Have you understood me so far? Is that a fairly professional college setting? Am I talking to you about serious stuff? Do you know what I'm talking to you about? Have I used PowerPoint once? We're good. We managed. I didn't have to put every single thing I say on a slide, and you still got it. Really, I mean, just break free from the horrible PowerPoint pressure, because that's what we do. We think that we cannot go out there in front of people if we don't have a we can. It's okay, really. It happens actually sometimes. Now that you start from this point, because this is the point I want you to start with. I want you to start from the point where there is no PowerPoint. And then, as you build your presentation and you think about your audiovisual aid, I want you to put things on your PowerPoint that are relevant and that are needed there, and that you feel will increase the quality and relevance of your presentation. That's the way to think about your presentation aids. What is there that I need to help my audience see it better, understand it better, remember it better? 3 main reasons for using audiovisual aids that are usually mentioned in public presentation is clarity, retention, and interest. If your audiovisual aid doesn't serve one of these 3 purposes, it's irrelevant. If it doesn't help your audience understand things better that could not be understood, and this is what Josh was talking about, graphs, proportions, flow of things is great. Audiovisual aids are great for those. When you show cycles, or when you show change, or when you show any rise or fall of a trend or of a percentage, things changing over time. That's great. Retention, that's what Gloria was talking about. Structuring the presentation. What helps your audience remember the presentation and remember where they are in the presentation? That's very important. That's where retention comes in. And finally, interest. What makes this presentation less boring? Every now and then, it's good to use your audiovisual aid to trigger your audience's interest. As in, if you talk about something that you think might not be very fascinating or might sound boring if you don't show it, think about some use of audiovisual aid that can make it maybe a little more dramatic. You can even do it with a graph if you think about it. Okay, I'm telling you that in 1999, 800,000 people had cell phones in the US. And then in 2009, which is 10 years later, 50 million people have cell phones in the US. And I'm telling you that. And you're hearing what I'm saying, okay. But if I do this, that's very clear. And that will make you remember, wow, seriously, that's a big change. If you make this graph go from this point to that point, and you can do it in PowerPoint, very like, there you go. Look what happened. You're going to remember that. That's going to create some interest. All these three were mentioned by you, and all these three are relevant reasons to use audiovisual aid. If you don't need it for one of these reasons, don't put it in. Once you decided to put it in there, because you feel better and you need it and you want your PowerPoint, there are a few things that are very important that I don't want you to feel like I'm oversimplifying it for you, but those are very important things. Make sure your audiovisual aid is visible for everyone. If you have audio, make sure everyone can hear it. If you have pictures or a video or something that you're going to enlarge on a big screen, make sure the definition is high enough for us to be able to see it. Those are silly things, but they make sense. If you're giving, for instance, a presentation at a conference, sometimes things that at our computer screen look just fine, if you blow them up to a size that allows people in the room to see them, the resolution becomes just so crampy that you can barely see what's on the screen. That's an important thing to remember. The other thing to remember, if you're showing something, if you're in a smaller room, let's say, and you're showing a graph or you're showing something that you're physically holding, don't do this, as you can clearly see, because Josh can clearly see. He can't see anything if I do this. And people do that sometimes. They would show a model, for instance, and they would put this model over here, as you can clearly see in my model, and then you can, but you can't even see my model. Those are important. Think about those. Those reasons are why I sometimes mention if you have the opportunity, check the room out first. Because, for instance, if you have, and in some sciences, models are really important. You show models, you use them. Make sure you can display them clearly. Make sure people can see them. Make sure you know how to kind of place yourself around it to don't get in the way or anything like that. If you're using something that is very dynamic or very colorful, make sure that it is understandable. Sometimes people do overload. Oh, I'm going to do bright green with orange and blah, and then at the end of it you just end up with a screen filled with color, but you still don't understand what's going on. Those are really important. Those are important to remember. Those are important to keep in mind as you're preparing for your presentation. Finally, which I mentioned at the very beginning, but I again want you to remember it. Your audiovisual aid isn't for you. It's not for you. Don't make your PowerPoint your outline. I strongly encourage you to either have your notes on the side of your slideshow, which is possible, or have your notes underneath your slides, but they don't show on the screen, or have an outline in hand. Because what's showing here is not for you. People who listen to you don't care how you got there. They are interested in why they are seeing it. If it's only for you, put it on your outline. Put it next to it. You see what I'm saying? This is very important, and this is why people read their PowerPoints, because they prepare their PowerPoints for themselves. So then they need them to figure out where they are. That's not how it works. This is for you, not for me. If I need to remember that this is clarity, retention, and interest, I'm going to write it over here. I'm not going to say, oh, okay, so clarity, why is it important? Oh, okay. Finally, besides looking awkward and not noticing that the room's on fire, it takes your credibility away. Because if you have to read your own PowerPoint, subconsciously what people are thinking is like, okay, why? Do you not know what you're talking about? Because if you need to read it, then why do you need to read it? Aren't you the one who wrote it? You know what's there, right? The other reason why not to write everything on your PowerPoint is, why are you there if they can read it all? Make yourself relevant. Make your audience pay attention to you. Because if you provide everything for them, then why then just go home? Just put your PowerPoint and go. Because if we don't need it, then what's the point of the whole thing? You have to have certain information that comes from you and only from you. Because that's why you're there. That's why we're interested in you, not your PowerPoint. Two more things I want to mention. First, if you have slides and you have outlines separately, include change of slides in your outline. That's an important thing to remember. Include your ADA, your audiovisual aid, whatever it is, in your outline for yourself. So you know when you need to change a slide. So you know when you're going to move from here to here and, for instance, work with a model. Sometimes when we get very stressed out, we forget what is supposed to be accompanying what we're talking. It happened to me at least several times when in my public speaking class, when I tell students, prepare your audiovisual aid and practice with it. What people would do is they would hear my lecture about we know how to have PowerPoint. So for instance, they would prepare a poster. It's a very nice poster. They come up, they put their poster. Very good, visible slide, everything's good. Okay. And then they deliver their entire speech. And they deliver, and then they're done, and they're like, oh. And I kid you not, it happens at least 2 times every quarter. Because if you don't practice with your audiovisual aid, you don't remember you have it there. And people forget about it constantly. So include it in your outline. If you have something that you need to do, change, switch, include it in your outline. And finally, you know how when you're drifting and you're kind of sitting in a presentation and you think, wow, that's really boring. Or it's not really boring, but it's like, it's kind of irrelevant, or whatever, I don't know it. What do? You read the slides of the person that's behind them. Or they talk about this part of the slide, and they talk, but you've already looked at this one, and you've read all these little notes that they have here, and you've read all these little notes, and then you thought, ooh, that's kind of a cool little corner here. I wonder where they're going to ornament. I like that. I wonder if I could do that for my TA class. And then you're thinking, that purple kind of looks really weird, maybe they would go with green. And you've done all that already. Well, if you want your audience not to do that, show the things that you talk about only when you talk about them. Don't show things you don't talk about, and don't talk about things you're not showing. So for instance, I know it sounds confusing. For instance, if you talk about an elephant, a zebra, and a squirrel, when you talk about an elephant, have a picture of an elephant. And don't say, in a minute we're going to be talking about zebras. So zebras, no. What you're showing elephants. Talk about elephants. Done talking about elephants, we're switching to a zebra, and we have a zebra in the picture. Once you have a zebra in the picture, don't say, oh, by the way, about elephants. So the other thing, no. We're done with elephants. We're on zebras right now. What happens if you want to say something between a zebra and a squirrel? Do you leave a zebra, or do you go for a squirrel? You have a blank slide. Put a slide in between a zebra and a squirrel. If you need one, because you're talking about something that's not zebra related, not yet squirrel related, but important to put in the middle, then put a blank slide. So you have your zebra, you have a visual break for them when they're not looking at your zebra and they're not ready for a squirrel yet, and then you move on to the next thing. No, it sounds silly, but I'm serious. It's that confusing very often because people, that's what people would do. Your audience would go ahead of you. If you show them the slide, they're going to read it. If you show them something that you're not talking about yet, of course they're going to be reading it. No, they're going to be listening to you. Why? Ooh, there's something new. Think about this. Don't be afraid to turn your PowerPoint off for a second. If you're done with this section, before you move on to this section, put a blank screen. It's perfectly acceptable.
I wanted to ask the thing about the blank screen. It's also good because they kind of get people out of this PowerPoint hypnosis where they're looking at the PowerPoint and they never look at you. And if you put a blank screen, they're like, oh, I forgot, this person is talking. So
That's a great point. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a great point, what Margaret just said, because you're there. And they forget you're there. If you are completely and utterly here, they really forget that they're listening to you. They're listening to your PowerPoint. That's a great point.
Take a picture of households between zebra.
I was thinking like put an arrow.
No, not an arrow. A personal.
Again, like they don't need
a picture of myself and then empty slide.
There you go. Now listen to me.
Yeah.
But no, it's a very valid point. It gets people kind of like, you know, and it's helpful. Sometimes throughout the 20-minute presentation, it's good to get people like, oh, that's what we're doing. Okay, let's go. We're ready. It's a good wake-up call too. So, to conclude, make sure you don't talk about things you're not showing. Talk about things only when you're showing them and don't show them when you're not talking about them. Start from a point where there is no PowerPoint. Start from a point where this is what I have to say. What in it could be better illustrated with some audiovisual help? Don't talk to it. Oh, I have this whole PowerPoint, I'm so proud of it. And check with your audience every once in a while. Sometimes we think things work, but only if we look at our audience going, we will know that it doesn't work. Do you have any questions about relevance, clarity, interest, or any other?
I have two questions. So the blank slide thing is really confusing me because I feel like if I were to show that at a conference or in a class, everyone would assume that I made a mistake. So then do I have to say to them, oh, this blank slide is to get you to focus on me now? Do I have to explain that, or do I just let it be out of the open?
Here's several things. That's a valid point. If all of a sudden you have a black screen, people might think, oh, what happened?
Yeah.
There are several ways to go about it. One way, if you need this break, if you're talking about one thing and then you don't need any audiovisual aid and then you need it again, what you can do is you can put something on the slide that lets them know it's still in the code of your PowerPoint. It's in the same theme,
Sure.
but there's nothing on it. So basically, like if your PowerPoint is, I don't know, green,
Okay.
that's one way to go about it. And the second way to go about it, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because it makes it more conversational, more natural, you can totally tell. Let me now address something else, or let me just talk about, and you just put it up there, and you address it in a way that lets them know, we don't need it right now. You can even say, okay, let's forget about PowerPoint for a second, continue, and then you can go back to your site. So there are several things to do it. You can, and I would say, why not? Absolutely, make a little joke about it, you know, or comment on it somehow to let them know, I know what I'm doing, hello. Or, which is very important, because people tend to assume that, like, oh, no PowerPoint, something happened. Or have it like in the theme of your PowerPoint, but just with no content.
Another good way to do that is to change where you are in the room. So a lot of the time you get kind of locked into like I'm standing on the side of my screen and talking about it. then when you have a blank screen, it gives you a chance to kind of walk in front of the screen and kind of move around a bit more. And people will see that, again,
You're still presenting and you know what you're doing, you just kind of,
yeah.
So my hunch is that if you have a template for your slide, or if it's even just white, if you blank it to black, it would be something like it would give the impression that this is an intentional change and not like a slide that is left empty.
Okay.
Also, PowerPoint, when you are presenting, you can press the point and the screen will be black. So then you can approach your computer, press the point and say, well, want to talk about this. I don't know.
yeah, you can kind of make it visible that you're turning it off. That's another, that you're switching. That's another way to approach it, absolutely. Sometimes you can just, because on those machines you have these things where you can switch what is visible to the audience. Yeah, you can make it one like.
One thing I always find effective is if people in the beginning have an outline, maybe 3 points they're going to talk about, and then when they finish one point, they just show that next point on the blank screen. Now that's coming. I could say you talk about 3 things. First talk about number 1, and then before you switch to number 2, you just put up the title of number 2, basically on the blank screen, and that will give you an opportunity to talk freely for a while before you go into.
Yeah, that's a good thing too. If you have like labels, kind of like if you have the main point and it has sub points, you can just put your main point on the screen and just talk about your sub points. Yeah, that might be a good idea too.
Another question.
Uh-huh.
So you said that PowerPoint isn't always necessary, but I'm wondering, it kind of goes back to the point that we made earlier, that if you don't have a PowerPoint, you seem maybe less professional or less prepared. So to kind of bridge that gap, what other kind of visual aids would you bring in instead of a PowerPoint? Because whenever I think of doing like a poster instead, I get that image of like, oh, this is third grade, third grade book report, and I had fun with my glue stick, and I feel like that's not professional either.
Well, think about our first guest lecturer. She didn't have a PowerPoint. She had a handout for us with the structure of her presentation. If you have a small enough audience, that might be a way to go. What else? Always feel free to use a board. I feel like that gives structure too. And that's really good if you create things as you go. Like if you want to show a certain progression, or if you want to end up with a structure, like what we did last time with the structure. The board I felt was a good use of audiovisual aid this last time, because I was kind of talking about the zebras as I went, and then we ended up with the structure on the board. So if you have the opportunity to use the board, that might be a good idea. Sometimes you don't need an actual PowerPoint presentation, even though you can use your computer. For instance, if you talk about your research and you need a table because you have results, you don't have to have 5 slides. You can have a slide with your results, and that's it. It still shows people you have your results and you have all your P's and whatever you need, the statistical significance, and they still see that you know what you're talking about, but you don't physically need to kind of like build up on it. That's sometimes what people do too, and I feel like you don't need, but absolutely feel free to like use your computer too, and even have a picture of your results or table or whatever you need. But a board, sometimes like our first presenter did, she had a little handout for us. I use the board constantly. I don't like PowerPoint. I don't absolutely necessarily have to.
Yeah, I don't know if it is a good way to use the laser pointer, because sometimes I feel it's necessary, but sometimes it is a little bit distracting for me. So I don't know if there's a good way to use the laser pointer.
It depends. Look, I would hesitate to answer this question in a very yes or no fashion, because it so much depends on the content. Like, I can imagine some scientific presentations where they're showing things on the model or in space where it really matters where we look at, and it's very important for us to to be looking at exactly what the speaker is showing us. And obviously, a laser pointer in that case is better than me being, so here on my slide, because absolutely. At the same time, I agree with you. Sometimes it's an overload. Sometimes people would use a laser pointer to point to their PowerPoint. I'm thinking, okay, I can see your PowerPoint, you know, really, it's on the wall there. And I can even figure out which paragraph you're reading. Woo! So yeah, sometimes it's kind of an overload. So I would say just go as you like. Kind of go back to this. If it's going to help them, if it's something that will really help your audience know exactly where you are, if it's a necessary, why put an extra?
I noticed that something I like when you have to like point out something like that is rather than like having like the laser pointer like jittering all over the screen, is if you know you're going to talk about it next, you duplicate that slide and then you just have like a circle, a red circle or something.
That's always a good one. That is true. You can just point to it, or you can have a circle, or you can, yeah. That's sometimes what people do is they take a part, they have a slide with the general picture or map or something, and then they just take a part, enlarge it, and that's their next slide. That's sometimes a good way too.
And I figure that out by when I'm practicing, am I pointing at my screen? And one way that I do it is I do it over the phone with my mom, where we both have the PowerPoint presentation, and then I give my presentation to her over the phone. And I come up with, am I having to stop and be like, oh, are you looking at this part of the slide? And that's where I figure out, like, oh, I need to draw attention to that, you know, either the laser pointer or that. Yeah. So, again, just practicing and figuring out where do you do that.
What a nice mother.
Yeah.
So if I'm giving a presentation where I'm supposed to be showing like diagnostics, like how to identify a beetle or like identify certain like signs of disease, then if I gave a handout that wasn't necessarily following what I was talking about, should I do that after the presentation and then just be reading it, or should I make a new piece of paper, like a handout, a new handout for them to look at while I'm talking?
This is a very good question. Where to include your handout if you need one? Because the problem is, if you give the handout before the presentation, they're going to read it. If you give the handout in the middle of presentation, there's going to be this like, oh, am I getting it? It rolls over, and then you lose the attention again. If there is a way for you to do it, sometimes it's best to not give a handout, present what you're talking about, and say, I'm going to give you this handout at the end of the presentation, so don't worry, you don't have to write everything down. You go through the process, and then you give them the actual graph or table or something that helps them do it when they need to identify or go through the process or classify or whatever you were talking about. Sometimes this works. That you can just be like, I'm going to give you this at the end of the presentation, so let's just take a look at this, and then I'm going to... Sometimes what works is, if you have enough time to give the handout like 5 minutes before the presentation, you can do it, and then from the beginning say, the handout I gave you will not be relevant until the second part of my presentation, or until I get there. That kind of gives people a clue, like, okay, I don't need it right now. So if you can, that's sometimes a good idea. If you have a small audience, you can risk passing the handout in your presentation because it's not going to take long. Because if you have 5, 8 people, it's not going to take long to pass it even while you're talking when you're ready for it. That's a tough one, though. It's a good question, because the way I would answer it is, think about the way to do it that would get in the way of the presentation the least. Again, communicative orientation. What will facilitate my message the best? Do I want them to look at it because this is crucial? Do I want them to focus on this because this is crucial? Or is it really, really important and necessary that they have a piece of paper in front of them when I talk about it? Because if so, then maybe I can sacrifice 45 seconds of their attention, but to make sure that everyone has a paper. That's kind of how I would approach it. Think about your message and what's the most important thing in it. The picture that they can follow and then relate, or the paper in front of them, or can they wait till the end, or is it very important they start with it? Sometimes if you want to, you can start with your handout, if you can. That's a good thing to do too. If you really need to hand it out, start with it. They're looking at it anyway. So if you can. Do you guys have any other questions about anything else? No? Do you feel like a little more ready to solve certain issues or address some things that might be helpful in the future, structure-wise or PowerPoint-wise?
So I always wonder if I'm putting too much information in the PowerPoint or not enough information. Sometimes people read the PowerPoint, sometimes they don't read it, but they put a bunch of stuff up, so I can't concentrate on it and look at the PowerPoint at the same time. I mean, so it's confusing, but I think if I look at what you've told us today, that if these people with these, all this wishy-washy stuff that I don't know what to do, this should make it clear. If the audience doesn't need it.
Because if that's what happens when you talk about the situation when people put stuff on PowerPoint and then talk about something else, that's not following the talk about things you're showing, don't talk about things you're not showing, and don't show things that you're not talking about.
Right.
Because that, of course, people are not going to be. That's irrelevant. I don't even know why people do it, and it's true people do it sometimes. Why? Do you seriously expect us to be able to read and listen and pay attention to both? Do you have an extra head for us to do that? I don't know how to do it with one. Absolutely, yeah. It's an overload.
How much people has to do with the background? Because sometimes when it's a one slide with only black letters, I usually think, okay, put more time in your presentation.
You know what? This is how I'm going to address that. This actually talks about it in detail, and I feel like they do a good job because they talk about stuff like pastel colors are better for backgrounds, sharper colors are better for that, and they address a lot of technical stuff like that I kind of didn't want to go into because I knew that this is what they're covering in part. But the general rule is the pastel colors work better for backgrounds and make an impression like you put some work in.
I think Fernando, our guest director today, is going to cover that as well. He's going to talk about, what fonts are great to use, what colors are good, what colors aren't good, and then he's also going to be teaching us in the computer lab how to actually use PowerPoint and the equivalence of it. So we're going to have a lot more.
And I feel like I didn't really want to get into, that's why I wasn't really technical with you guys, because we're going to have a person who's, I'm looking forward to learning from. I'm just so excited. My PowerPoint will be so much better. And I didn't want to, by any means, overstep it. And I feel like for me, it's more important that you kind of hear about the actual why, and then we're going to hear from Fernando about how, and all the aspects of how.
And so where do we meet on Thursday?
Here.
Yeah.
Or not the computer lab? You said something about the computer lab.
The computer lab is the week after, and I'll send out an email to remind you all.
But yeah, the Thursday we're meeting, I'm so looking forward to it. Because I'm always a little embarrassed about my PowerPoint. My PowerPoints are very nice. Okay. I know I have to memorize.